Welcome back to the IASF 2013 World Championship coverage here on Chaos TV. It is time for our grand finals here. The Netherlands versus Korea. I am James Stress O'Leary, once again alongside Panky, and it's been a great weekend and it's not done yet. We've still got the last best of three of the weekend to go.
It's gonna be a big one too. Netherlands versus Korea. I mean, reading the chat, reading you guys sitting here before the game starts, everyone thinks Korea is going to whitewash over this. But honestly, this Dutch team have been proving themselves rather formidable throughout the course of the weekend as well. So I don't want to write them off just yet. We want to see how things open up. So far, though, as the bans have opened up, nothing too crazy out of the ordinary. It's what we saw, very similar to the previous game in one way or another. Waiting on that last one coming out of Korea now. But Dutch first pick. I mean, we've got Shyvana open again. They tried her a couple of times throughout the weekend. They sin in here again too. There's so many options to choose from, and an interesting last ban from Korea in Corki. Yes, he's very strong. Yes, he's very powerful. We've seen that throughout and through. But banning him is a new approach.
Yeah, Metalix has had a good couple of games on Corki. Now, surprisingly enough, Morsu has played a heck of a lot of Zed this tournament, which normally doesn't get through. And now the Netherlands banned that out themselves, so it kind of tells me that they've got a different game plan for this game specifically here against the Korean team. And
I think they just wanted to first pick that Elise over anything. The speed they picked that Elise up after that Corki ban came through, they wanted that. That was their plan. And obviously they didn't want to leave Zed open then for the Koreans to first pick it. So it was ban Zed or ban Elise, and they went straight. Oh, sorry, ban Zed or give up Elise, and they'd rather ban the Zed and take the Elise from some things, because we've seen Morsu's champion pool. It is quite diverse, so I'm sure he can do a similar effect with other champions as well.
Hood Boss going for that Gragas. We've seen already he's had good games on that alongside we saw earlier Denmark have some success with the Gragas in the tournament, but it was not enough for them to overcome the Spanish five-man team, of course, which would end up taking third place just earlier today. Lulu is a support that has been locked in here for the Netherlands, which we've seen a couple of times this tournament, but overall has somewhat seen a little bit of a drop-off in recent times.
Yeah, I mean, we saw her a couple of times earlier in the weekend up alongside that Caitlyn. The long-range poke, the very good early damage, those glitter lances really helped bully a 2v1 lane, 2v1 situation, and then control a 2v2 situation once that came back into fruition. But it's interesting to see them picking it up before they got their support, before they got their AD carry, especially considering Korea had already snatched up that Caitlyn very, very quickly.
Now, this is something we saw out of Korea on Friday, where they would pick this Nidalee and looked very, very comfortable with Sangmoon playing Nidalee from the middle lanes. So, not all that surprising to see them go for it again, and the Netherlands may be thinking about answering with some poke of their own with that Ezreal. And now, we talked about Morsu's champion pool. He really has been looking a lot at that Kha'Zix when he hasn't been able to play Zed, and has had a good few games on it. Singed will be the final pick here to round out the composition for Korea, so our team compositions have all been locked in.
Interesting, it's got a lot of long-range poke coming out of Korea again. Controlling bottom lane with Caitlyn and Sona, a lot of poke in there with that general power chord and him of Valor damage, but again, very, very squishy Sona. Now, Morsu's picked up his Kha'Zix, which we've seen a couple of times throughout the weekend, and it caught a couple of teams very much off guard. Yet to see him face off against Singed though, and honestly, unless they get that snowball going pretty early again, Singed is very easily going to hit that point of, I don't care what you do to me, I'm just going to run around and not really care. At which point, Kha'Zix really is going to have a challenge beasting him down. Unless he can do 100-0 in nothing, he'll start to lose that trade, and it's not going to take many items for Singed to stop him 100-0 in him down.
Yeah, and of course, whenever I think of Singed being played, I always remember back to just how strong Another Korean player, Shai, used to be on Singed and still is, and has put out so many good games. He's a champion that really isn't played all that much in North America and Europe. We saw Kiwi Kid from Dignitas pick it up in Season 3 at the very beginning, and of course, Dyrus has played Singed many times previously, but as of late, had a couple of hits with some changes to his kit, and also some of the other top laners around. But the Koreans seem very comfortable in picking Singed up for this game.
That'd be a text message that would stress.
It would. It's actually across the room, and I meant to turn it off, so that's my bad on that one. That's the curse of having a very sensitive mic, and also just tweeting that we were going live with the stream. But that means the stream is live. We're in-game for game number 1 of the Grand Finals here between the Netherlands and Korea. It is game on for the first place for this $28,000 prize pool.
So, see how things start up. I mean, we initially, in the last few games, and almost every game throughout the weekend, we've seen some level of invade. Most of the time it is just planting a ward in your own jungle to watch your opponent's entrance, making your way into your enemy jungle to plant your own wards and just to get some early vision and give some early knowledge as to what your opponents are up to. However, in this game, both teams sticking to their own jungle, just planting their wards in the rivers, watching the entrances, watching the gank paths, but leaving it at that. So I imagine we'll see both junglers just doing their own buffs, nothing crazy, no level invades as they do through, and they will just then make their way towards that top lane for that notorious, say, 3.5 minute gank. But I also don't imagine that 3.5 minute gank would really bring out any kind of kill. I don't see Lee Sin and Singed initiating a fight. I'd imagine Lee Sin will be there just to try and make sure Singed doesn't die. And for that reason, Kha'Zix and Elise probably won't take or shouldn't take a fight because they know Lee Sin will be there to counter gank it.
So both teams fairly cautious to begin this one. None of the extremely deep wards that we saw out of Denmark and Spain earlier today, where they would be looking for those 2v1 situations. Now,
they ninja swapped it.
Yeah, the positions of the Netherlands team tells me that they will be going for that 2v1, but they will be spotted fairly quickly. The Koreans already ping them as soon as they step onto that ward. And that instantly tells the Korean team that Singed might be in a little trouble, so he straight away goes to Golems to get himself some experience in the early part of this lane.
Yep, Lee Sin will go straight up there to help him out too. At least use that top lane duo of her team to get that blue buff early on, which means she's going to approach the bottom lane at about 3 minutes once she's done that red buff, and will be able to help more so out gaining that CS and keeping him in the experience game too. So Singed with a quick base will come back to the lane and hopefully be in a similar situation to Kha'Zix. We'll have to wait and see exactly how their level up goes, how their experience is, because of course the Koreans pushing very slowly here to make sure that Kha'Zix gets as little experience as possible, but at the same time, so are Elisa, Lulu and Ezreal. They've been very slow, so there's going to be a big wave of creeps hitting that tower as Singed arrives, so he's not going to have lost as much XP as he perhaps could have if they'd have pushed that into tower faster.
Yeah, Bro just arrives as that ward goes down from Sona, so Korea are very aware of where exactly Bro is on the map. They'll be expecting his appearance in the lane, and that also gives Sevilla that opportunity to steal away some of the Wraith camp there. Takes the big one, leaves the 3 small ones, and will back off with a small little victory in that jungle.
This is also a Doran's ring Singed too, so he hasn't got that Doran's shield, he hasn't got that damage block and that regeneration that a lot of Singeds have. He's just going to do a lot of damage with his flings and his poison, so it's going to be very interesting to see what damage Metalex and Kialis can lay down onto him, because most of it's going to stick after a while.
Yeah, and I said Sevilla was looking to back off. I actually found position on Hoodboss in the middle lane, as Morsu will go aggressive in the bottom. Sona is getting taken down very low. Exhaust, however, is preventing him from picking up the kill. Bro, however, will come in from the side, forces the barrier out from Caitlyn after picking up the kill on to Sona. Flash forced out as well. Can he get the cocoon? It's still on cooldown for another second, and I don't think he'll be able to get this kill unless he goes right under the tower, which he is more than willing to do.
Very nicely played by Bro to finish that off. Little bit too early came out from Morso. Like as soon as he knew Elise was there, as soon as he figured, right, he will be in range, I can start this fight. Admittedly, he knew he needed to go early. He expected there to be a ward to spot him, so he'd have to lock the pair of them in, but there wasn't actually. Bro managed to avoid the ward. It was only one in the tri-bush, so he got straight up the river, and as a result, Morso could have perhaps waited a little bit longer and saved his life, but fact of the matter is he got the first blood anyway, so having died for that is not the end of the world. As top lane, Lee Sin comes out.
Now Sevilla's looking to assist here, and Chase is on. Status helps Sevilla pick up that first kill there for that top lane on Lulu. 2 kills apiece overall, and this is back and forth from the get-go.
Yep, I mean they knew Elise was bottom, they knew that she wouldn't be there anytime soon, and then pushed up there. Singe can easily dart onto that Lulu. Lee Sin with a quick ward pass. Metalex actually a little bit of trouble for Sevilla, but now Elise is here.
Yeah, it will land the cocoon. Very nice. Edge of the skill shot lands and picks that one up for Metalex.
Nicely finished off. Just Sevilla outstaying his welcome ever so slightly. He also took a turret shot in there that he didn't need to. Just a little bit too keen to push that lane.
Yeah, we see Gragas is backing in that middle lane, slightly behind on the CS, but that's somewhat to be expected in a matchup where it is ranged versus melee. You tend to find that for the early game, any champion that can start to zone and harass a little bit in that mid lane will get themselves a slight advantage. Whether that carries on for the rest of the game remains to be seen, although Sangmoon is a fairly formidable Nidalee, and when he hits level 6 we'll be able to farm waves down even faster. Morsu, however, is in a little bit of, well, not quite trouble yet, as the Korean bot lane are focusing the tower. There's a big stack of minions in that bottom lane, and Morsu just isn't able to clear them out fast enough, as he cannot throw those void spikes out that often. However, Sevilla has dropped down into this bottom lane. They will focus down the tower, and Morsu surely can see that this is about to go fairly badly for him. Piltover Peacemaker lands. Sevilla is sticking on him after landing that Sonic Wave resonating strike. Morsu will go down. That's a clinical kill picked up for Caitlyn.
Yep, very much so. I mean, he knew there was a chance of him dying as soon as that tower fell, and he was backing away from it ever so slightly, but he didn't expect Lee Sin to loop around behind him, and once he did, that was basically him dead from there. Tried to leap over the wall, but
couldn't quite get away with his life on that one. And they picked up that tower as well, so they have the overall net gold advantage, but Metalex and Kialis have been pushing up in towards that top lane fairly hard at the same time. Status will throw Kialis back in, but it was just before that last minion died, so the tower shot didn't really catch on. It was a nice attempt there by Status, but meanwhile, while he's providing a distraction, Korea take away the dragon.
It's a very nice play, but then they knew they had control of the map, they knew they had complete vision down there. At least had gone up to that blue buff. Kha'Zix was long to be found, and with that tower pushed up, they knew that they'd see anyone making their way down there long before they were in range to steal that dragon away. So get themselves another 1,000 gold, and on top of that bottom tower, they've really increased their lead out. We did see Hoodboss, he actually used his ultimate onto Nidalee in that middle lane. Didn't really result in anything when he did so though, but now he's got his blue buff back up. The ult will be back up shortly, but he's still lacking a little bit of AP.
Now, something to note about that mid lane is a lot of this CS advantage comes also from the fact that Sangmoon hasn't had to back yet at all. He's at 71 CS, 8 minutes, well, 8.5 minutes into this game, and really just has been farming up. He's sat on 2,400 gold currently, so when he does go back and buy, he will be able to pick up quite a big spike of itemization, and it's going to get this blue buff, which means that if he really didn't need to go back yet, he might not have to, as of course Nidalee can heal herself up and keep herself in lane. However, it looks like she will roam down towards the bottom lane. That's a very nice flash. Crescendo comes out. Kialis will drop there, and that's a good kill for Sangmoon. Takes that gold total even closer to 3,000.
Oh, nice kick from Sevilla.
Yeah, Metalex is now in trouble though, as he'll get taken out. Sevilla just about survives that one.
Managed to land his Q long range onto Metalex, fired up, landed on top of him, flashed over him, and then kicked him back in towards Caitlyn and Sona. Very, very nicely engaged. More so, that we'll take that top tower down, and now Brobo reveals himself. But can they get onto Status?
Yeah, the chase is on, and Status is trying to desperately get away from this. He shouldn't really try and chase the Singed, but when he's that low health, it is a very tempting prospect. He does drop Brobo very low. Morsu desperately trying to just stay out of the poison trail. Gets thrown back into it with the fling. It is going to tick him down, and that's the danger of staying around a Singed even if he is low.
Very much so, and he's got that slight AP as well, making him even more deadly. And with Lee Sin, nice reaction coming to save the day. Now heads towards that mid lane where Hoodboss is already low and has no ultimate. Forces him to flash under his own turret, but he does stay alive just to rout. Sangmoon incredibly low, but as you mentioned, he's got that heal, getting a lot of his health back.
Yeah, this time we'll back off. It'll be interesting to see exactly what he picks up. He can nearly afford a Rabadon's Death Cap if he really wanted it this early in the game. Straight out buys an Athene's Unholy Grail and boots. That's some good farming there by Sangmoon.
That's a lot of gold. I wouldn't even say a lot of it's just because he didn't have the base. There was just a lot of CS that Gragas missed. I mean, we saw that mid lane a fair bit. I watched it a while. Hoodboss was just too scared to go in and take some of the CS with his body slam. He could have easily picked up 3, 4, 5, 6 more per every 2 or 3 waves sort of thing. He was just letting them go because he was scared of that Nidalee. That Nidalee didn't have any Ignite. So not really sure what he was too worried about.
Explosive Cask was used there to try and deter the Korean team from taking down that mid tower. They still have about a third of the health left on it, so they are still looking to get it, but there's a lot of damage in that middle lane still for the Netherlands. When that Gragas ult is available, they do have to wait for it to come back up, though. Pink ward battles, oh, it's a tie. Neither team establishes that ward, but Sangmoon is looking for the kill, gets it with the spear over the wall. Didn't even need the vision for that one. Perfect aim.
Very, very nicely done indeed. And of course, as soon as he threw the spear, hopped into cat form and leapt in the opposite direction, putting more distance between himself and the target, making it do more damage.
Yeah, now Hoodboss takes another one in the base. He very nearly got another max range spear on to Metalex, as Metalex just managed to get out of range of that spear. But now an inner tower is heavily under pressure. We're only 12 minutes into this game, and it doesn't even feel like the Koreans had that much of an overwhelming advantage, but the good positioning and good timing on that allows them to get an inner tower very early on.
See, here's what the Koreans have been doing. Like, they've been getting these little advantages. They push Metalex back to the fountain there. They sniped Lulu off in a death that she really shouldn't have had. She didn't need it. They kept Kha'Zix locked up in the top lane and rotated around behind him. And rather than just using that advantage to, I'll go back and shop, or I'll take a jungle creep, they're taking towers, they're taking objectives. You don't always have to kill someone to take objectives or to take them out of the fight. And every time they're doing that, they're just pushing a little bit more advantage. They're taking a bottom tower, or they're taking a dragon, or they've taken the 2 mid turrets. They're just taking a little bit more here and there. And their superior communication and coordination means there's always 5 of them within 10 seconds of each other. They will easily be able to get across and help each other out at an instant, and they know that. And as a result, they are abusing that fact because the Dutch team just aren't responding quite so well, and they are always cut off. This pink ward battle you're talking about is just cutting them off from each other. The Dutch players cannot get across to help their teammates out like the Koreans can.
Yeah, and Metalex is maybe trying to find a way of keeping that red buff for his team, but they're committing 4 men to this. The Koreans are still around, and the flash crescendo is available, so they do have to be careful, but there's still so much damage that'll come out from Hoodboss if he does manage to land a good cask. And that's why the Koreans will back off, take this dragon, and as you said, they don't really need to kill anyone there, they just need to make sure that they have that positioning around to pick that up. Meanwhile, in the top lane, Status was farming out that minion wave behind the tower, so trying to make sure that Morsu is kept busy as he starts to rotate towards mid, but will end up backing off from that little skirmish between the two of them.
So, Caitlyn and Sona aggressively pushing their bottom lane again. all again made possible by the fact that they have some very deep ward placed within this bottom half of the Dutch jungle. And they know that Nidalee and Lee Sin were already on their way up here after doing that blue buff, so they were going to have support from their team pretty rapidly. Look at that Poe combination on Kialis. One Peacemaker and one Spear. It's nuked straight through poor little Lulu's health bar. Forces are backing away, and immediately that 3-man defense that was here under the turret becomes a 2-man, and it means they need to bring Gragas over.
Yeah, they bring Gragas, and they're even committing Morsu to this. Gragas actually gets caught out by the Sonic Wave. Resonating Strike gets kicked back in. The Explosive Cast will put Sevilla in danger, and Bro picks that one up as Korea are chasing quite a lot onto Hoodboss. The spear does not land, and Status is going to have to commit to this if he really wants it, but Sangmoon goes around the side. Meanwhile, in that lower jungle still, it looks like Caitlyn might have been caught out by Kialis here, gets Whimsy down. Metalex is trying to get away, takes the spear by Sangmoon, who comes back out of that one after picking up Hoodboss in the base. Morsu takes the wild growth from Lulu to stay alive, but Caitlyn is chasing on, and that pink ward may not quite be enough to land that auto attack, and Kialis now dropped very low. Final spear is a rampaging Nidalee 4-0-1. That's another kill. Morsu gets picked up in the top jungle, and Bro was the last survivor on about 100 health.
It was a nice start. Korea went a little bit deep. Sevilla lost his life, maybe unnecessarily, catching that Gragas out, and to be honest, didn't really catch that Gragas out. He still managed to get all his abilities off and survive. But ultimately, they just kept the pressure up, kept the strength up, and that Singed has already become an unkillable force as far as the Dutch team are concerned. He's doing too much damage for them to really put a stop to him without losing a lot of people to him on his own. And then when you include the rest of the Korean squad in there, that very slippery, high damage Nidalee, leaping around and taking out everyone that's already been made low thanks to that poison, they cleaned that fight up with ease.
Yeah, and because he's had that Rod of Ages now for a couple of minutes already, it's already starting to stack, and it just means that he's going to get even tankier the longer this goes on, which, you know, you'd think now the Netherlands would have been happier drawing this out, as they are at a disadvantage. But when you consider that Singed is going to get even more tanky, Sevilla gets dropped a little bit in that top lane, but I don't think the Netherlands are quite confident enough, especially without having the wards on the map, to really commit to anything like that, even though they would be fairly comfortable in taking out Sevilla.
Yeah, he knows this though. He's getting back out and away from there. Plenty of space between him and Elise and Kha'Zix, but now he notices the rotate from his team as he can go back in there. Elise Kha'Zix very much exposed. They must know something's up for Lee Sin to come back like that. Something has to be there, and Sangmoon dives the turret.
Yeah, Sangmoon is that something. Sevilla will get healed by Sona, but it wasn't enough to keep him alive. There's a lot of damage came out as Korea are now readjusting themselves, but there's not really any way that Morsu and Bro can stay there because the poke is just too much from Sangmoon right now.
That was very sloppy, to be completely honest, there from Korea. They could have done that so much better. Just got a little bit over-aggressive and impatient, rushed into it. Didn't manage to pick up any kills, and in fact lost Sevilla for it. They had brought Singed across to come around behind them as well, but by the time he got there, fight was done, dusted and over. Metalex is left to push that bottom lane, but Kha'Zix is still pretty low, and he does look horribly exposed.
Yeah, and it looks like Status is going on. I've got music on the brain on that one. Morsu gets flinged back into the poison trail, and that is surely going to spell the end of Morsu in that lane.
Yeah, Morsu just overextended again. Singed doesn't care about that turret damage, was easily just going to walk straight through it. Sangmoon trying to steal away that blue buff does lose out to the Gragas ultimate combo. It's way too much damage coming out of that Gragas for that, so at least the blue buff has been saved as far as the Dutch team are concerned, but the top tier 2 turret may not be so lucky.
Yeah, Metalex spent a lot of time down in that bottom lane, and really Korea spotting that will be able to exploit that extra man from the overlap even after taking out Morsu. That meant there was really no way the Netherlands could hold that one off. And the positioning feels like they're looking towards the Baron, and you can see them right-clicking in towards that Baron pit every so often as they passed it. I I'm kind of glad to see them not go for it, and you saw even the Netherlands weren't too sure as they had to use a True Shot barrage, but this might mean that they've been cut off as Morsu may be caught out by Sevilla alongside Brobro here. It doesn't look like Korea want to commit.
Again, the Korean team just completely out-rotating the Dutch. They are sliding themselves deep in the middle of this Dutch lineup. They're splitting them down the middle. They don't know where they can be. They can't come in. They can't collapse in on this team. And in fact, they're trying now, but it's not too great.
Yeah, they took Sangwon quite low on this, but now the counter-engage turns as Korea start to decide that they can fight this when they are quite low on a couple of members, and Status actually gets slowed quite a bit there by the Glitterlance spear, just dodged by a nice repel from Brobro. That probably would have spelled the end of him if he had taken that, but the Netherlands will hold the aggression for now from Korea.
Yep, they're going to back up. They're going to face shot by and probably do that Dragon again. Grab themselves another 1,000 gold.
But I have a feeling it is only for now, because Korea will heal up. They will take every objective that they can from this map, as they stole away the red as well. So really not leaving the Netherlands with much left to take. Just those waves that will end up at their doorstep. They do have a fairly large wave pushing away from them up in that top lane, so they do have to send it now up there to deal with that. But as soon as everybody is bought, I am fairly confident that the aggression will resume once again.
The Korean team here are playing as a unit. They are playing as a team. The Dutch guys, unfortunately, still not yet really at that stage. They're playing fairly split up. They're playing almost solo games. And yet to see them really converse and play as a squad. But it may also be too little too late when they do. Sangman dodging away from that stun at the last second. Gragas, it would have missed, but Sona actually flashed into it.
But that's a big ultimate that has been used there, as the cask was really the way of disengaging from these fights, and Sevilla, now knowing this, is able to chase on. Ward Jump comes forward. He's looking for a better Sonic Wave than the easy one onto Kialis, but Kialis does take it, and Will Flash does get Dragon Rage back in. Forced to ultimate himself. That's going to really hinder the survivability of the Netherlands team. Ace in the hole clips onto Morsu, and there's a lot of poke now that's going to come out in front of this middle turret.
Yeah, they just take down only the support, but they burn a lot of abilities from the rest of that Dutch team and a lot of their health bars too, so they run straight down towards the Baron pit, going to clear the wards they find along the way and immediately engage. Now here's the thing, this is dangerous, this is risky, especially against Gragas, whose ultimate is back off cooldown. He could try and steal this away, and the smite is still up from Brobro. But the way the Koreans have been playing, if they decide to peel, they will all peel and they will focus well, and that will be all that it takes. We see Elise go in.
Oh, he gets it as well. Brobro with the steal. Sevilla now dropped very low, forced to jump out of this. Morsu takes a crescendo before he's able to pick up the kill, but there's a double kill already for Nidalee, and even though they've taken the Baron away, Korea, even with low health, still feel fairly confident at chasing this when Sammoon just jumps through the barrel and chases on towards Hoodboss. Status now attempting to get towards them for that fling, and they throw the golems in the way to prevent Nidalee from landing any massive damage with the spear, but they finally get it onto Metalex, and now this really is just trying to clean up here for Korea. Sammoon gets dropped very low. There's the shutdown for Gragas as Hoodboss manages to distract them, and this is a lot of wasted time, especially after taking that Baron away that the Korean team really would have liked to have used to take some objectives, and it forces them to back.
So very nice steal from Brobro, but Korean team is still very, very strong and still able to chase down many of the Dutch members. But the Baron buff is now stayed there on Gragas and on Metalex. Those are the two important damage dealers for the Dutch lineup. And more importantly, Gragas got that 500 gold bonus from killing Nidalee. That's going to help him out a lot. He does just about finish one item though.
Sevilla showing us just how tanky he is. Nearly has that Aegis of the Legion completed, so felt fairly confident going in against Elise Kha'Zix under his own tower 1v2. Didn't take that much damage, and Korea still have the control here, but that Baron would have really signaled the end had they picked that one up. Their siege potential would have just pretty much been limitless if they had regeneration as well as that massive poke. However, the Netherlands feel like they can take this tower. They will get it without any kind of contest from Korea because Sangmoon is crossing from the bottom lane up towards this fight.
Yeah. Dutch were looking to push that mid lane up, but as soon as they realised 5 Korean players are there, they back out and leave. They couldn't take that fight, even with Baron buff on a couple of their champions. Kings walk across that bottom lane, get that pushed up into the turret, and rotate down there and properly try and take it out themselves. They did look to Dragon there, that's what they wanted to, but it is not up, and at least Kazakhs immediately have to back up ahead towards the mid lane. We also see the bottom pair recall as they realise the Koreans are now pushing this mid lane. They need to be there to defend that inhibitor turret.
Yeah, had they committed to taking down that bottom tower, even though there was a big minion wave, they really would have got outmaneuvered there by the Koreans, who were already starting to react. They did have to push a couple of minion waves through, so they've only just got there, and it's a good reaction by the Netherlands to understand that. They are still behind. There's the explosive cask, only lands onto Caitlyn, knocks her back. There's really just not a lot of damage coming out yet, but there's a massive amount of damage onto Metalex by Sangmoon, and really they cannot sit there and take those spears all that much, even with the Baron regen.
There's terrifying poke coming out of Sangmoon, and look at the heals that go out onto Caitlyn there. She took a couple of turret shots from both Nidalee and Sona. Krag Assault wasn't attempted and engaged there from the Dutch side, but couldn't quite land it on the right target or landed on a useful target, and they will lose that inhibitor turret.
Ooh, Metalex just dodged one more spear there, but he's been landed in that slow and the mega adhesive, and Morsu takes the spear, and these spears are just doing so much work. 6, 1 and 3, that Rabadon's Sorcerer's Boots and the Athenes with another blasting wand is just chunking through the health of the Dutch players. Korea will back off, however. They do have a big wave pushing in towards them on the top, and the Netherlands look to answer with a push of their own down mid.
Yeah, the Koreans have a big wave pushing top, someone's going to deal with that, and they've used a lot of health and a lot of mana and a lot of abilities taking that turret down, so they need to back away. They couldn't fight there, and they couldn't keep pressuring that inhibitor. This gives the Dutch side a chance to come and try and return with their own push. They may, in fact, they almost certainly will be able to take down this one tower.
Oh, the explosive cask and the true shot barrage is going to take a couple of members of Korea very low. Sona's not quite able to fall there as they're trying to get the damage out. That's dominating for Caitlyn, but is it enough? As Sangmoon gets jumped on by Morsu, can they pick any more up from here? Caitlyn is going to try and get blasted down, but it's a good escape by it now, as they now turn onto Kialis, who will pick up the kill, but Status is one of the last men standing alongside Sona, who was forced out of that fight very early on.
Well, they would have been able to take that turret down if they just sat there and taken the turret down. Instead, they did land a nice combo onto Caitlyn, so they tried to burst her down and blow her up. But she stayed alive, and they ended up going very deep and getting baited into a very, very deep, not so wonderful dive. And as a result, took a lot of turret damage. They dived onto a Korean squad, gave them more than enough time to regroup and to fight them on their own terms. And, well, the Korean team managed to come out on top, picking up more and more kills. And this Singed is still yet to die and is only getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, he ended that fight with about 3/4 of his health and just bought a Warden's Mail at the tail end of that. So he's getting very, very tanky and has been for quite a while. Already over 3,500 health, and it's very difficult to take that away from him once he's building these resistances with the Spirit Visage and the Warden's Mail. That's another dragon going to the Korean team. And they really are just trying to tie up these loose ends. That Baron buff was enough to stall them out for a while after a nice steal by Brobro, but with an exposed inhibitor now, really it is just the poke game that's going to come from Korea. I wonder whether the Netherlands will hold under the pressure or whether they'll crack.
So this inhib should be easily killed here by Korea. The Dutch team cannot get close enough to try and fend it off. And then the Baron's going to come up again in about 40 seconds. We see Seville goes in.
Dragon's Rage back into the team. Morsu has to jump out, so won't be able to land as much damage now in the early goings of this fight. Status, he's just going to run straight in and try and catch on to Kialis, maybe looking to fling. But the Koreans don't want to overly commit. They took the inhibitor. They know they've got the net gain from that. And now they will back off, clear things out, and maybe prepare for that Baron as it comes up in 15 seconds.
I was very surprised to see Seville go for that before the inhib had actually died. Because if they had all peeled off the inhib to take that fight, and it had gone wrong, the inhib wouldn't have died, and that would have made that entire push a complete waste. And if they had all died, they would have given up the Baron to the Dutch team and completely threw away their advantage. But the inhib did fall very quickly afterwards, and that Dutch team did nothing but run from Singed. So they got away with it. But with the Baron having just respawned, the Korean team do have to go off, push some lanes back up, heal by shot, come out as strong as possible, as there is a very real possibility of the Dutch team taking that away a second time around, and that really would spell trouble for this Korean side.
Yeah, especially with Singed down in the bottom lane. That's a big commitment shown by Status to the fact that they don't really feel like that unless Korea were the ones to start that Baron, that the Netherlands would be able to really do anything about it. And you see Drags Morsu down, and a couple of the members of the Netherlands team down into the bottom side of the jungle. Caitlyn picks up a quick Silver Sash to keep herself safe in these fights. Obviously looking to try and reduce the slow from that Glitter Lance, or maybe even Cocoon. We'll see how those turn out in the fights. But 8-2 with 9 assists here for Caitlyn. That's a good start. And when you look all the way down the Korean team, there is a lot of gold and a lot of kills where they really do need them.
That stung Kialis. That stung.
Looks like Korea want to chase onto this one. Sevilla maybe looking for some wave.
Sangmoon just killed all of Elise's spiders. That's a big deal. That's a big portion of Elise's damage output as and when this next fight starts. And that means Elise has got to go out and kill some creeps now to try and get those spiders back up.
It's somewhat problematic now. Korea will stack in the bush. It doesn't matter whether there are any spiders there. Nice explosive cask will push a lot of the members of Korea away, and Morsu jumps in towards the backline to try and pick off Sangmoon, but this fight has spread all over the place, and Status is so tanky chasing down Metalex that the rest of the team are just able to deal with the rest of the threats from the Netherlands. Sangmoon will pick up that kill onto Morsu. Now they turn their attention to Gragas as Hoodboss trying to get away. Korea have pushed him far enough out that they feel like that they can take more from the base.
Well played, Godly, says Hoodboss. On that chase. Caitlyn was dealing with Metalex and Kialis on Ezreal and Lulu solo in that fight. After the Gragas ult initially came out, split everyone up, she ran down and dealt with the two of them on her own.
And it looks like Korea are just going to end the game here. It now is able to take that one down. That's a significant amount of damage on there from the Korean team, and that was a convincing performance for this first game of the best of 3, and really quite surprising that they managed to tank that down with no minions. Status was just so very tanky towards the end of that, didn't even die. 4-0 and 13 in that game.
They really did prioritize. I mean, it's a known thing about the Korean scene. They do prioritize objectives over a lot of other things, and they really rushed them down in this game. Not necessarily getting kills every time they went for a gank, but they would force someone out of lane, they would force someone out of position, and then take an objective, then take a dragon, then take a tower, and then they just had so much control over the map, feeding all of that gold into their support, into that Sona, who only had boots and Sightstone basically by the end of that game. She picked up